The day the Vraxian ships appeared in Earth's sky was just like any other Tuesday. Most people were at work or school when the news broke. Giant crystal ships hung in the atmosphere above every major city. They did not attack. They simply waited. Captain Alan Wright of the U.S. Defiance was eating lunch when the call came. His sandwich fell to the floor as he rushed to the bridge. The massive alien vessel above Washington, D.C. was 10 times larger than his ship. "Sir, they're sending a signal," said the communications officer. On the main screen, a tall figure appeared. The alien had blue skin that looked like glass. It had 4 arms and 3 dark eyes that blinked sideways. "I am Zorthol, ambassador of the Vraxian Empire," it said in perfect English. "Your world is now under our protection. Resistance is unnecessary and unwise. 32 species before you have accepted our rule. They live in peace under our guidance." Captain Wright stood straight. "This is Captain Alan Wright of the United States. Earth is not yours to take. We need to discuss this with our leaders." The alien smiled. "You have 7 Earth days to surrender. After that, we will be forced to demonstrate our power." Within hours, the United Nations called an emergency meeting. Leaders from all countries gathered to discuss what to do. Most were afraid. "We must surrender," said the French president. "Look at their technology. We cannot fight them." "The Chinese military agrees," said another leader. "These aliens have conquered many worlds. Why would Earth be different?" The room filled with voices all saying the same thing. Surrender was the only option. Then Admiral Donna Miller stood up. She was the head of the North American Defense Fleet. Her gray hair was cut short, and her eyes were sharp. "We've faced threats before," she said. "Humanity doesn't bow to bullies. Not now, not ever." Many leaders shook their heads. A Russian general laughed. "With what weapons? Their ships are immune to our missiles. Our pilots report that their fighters cannot even get close." "We find a way," Miller insisted. "We always have." But she was alone in her thinking. By the end of the day, most world governments were already preparing surrender terms. In a small garage in Dallas, Texas, mechanic Lisa Patel watched the news with a wrench in her hand. She turned to her friends. "So that's it. We just give up." Her friend shrugged. "What can we do?" "They're aliens, Lisa." Lisa threw the wrench down. "My grandfather didn't fight in wars so I could live as a slave to some blue space invader." That same evening, in a classroom in Boston, history teacher Greg Sullivan was erasing his chalkboard when his phone buzzed. The message was simple. "Meeting tonight. Bring anyone you trust. We fight." Greg looked at the alien ship visible through his classroom window. He had taught his students about resistance movements throughout history. Now it was time to start one. Around the world, similar scenes played out. While governments prepared to surrender, ordinary people began to gather. They met in basements, garages, and back rooms of restaurants. They shared information and made plans. On the 3rd day, something strange happened. The Vraxians tried to broadcast a calming message to Earth's population. It worked on many people who suddenly felt the aliens were right. But millions of humans felt nothing at all. In his hidden command center, Zorthol was confused. Why aren't they all submitting? The psychic broadcast should affect their entire species. His science officer checked the readings. "Unknown, Commander. Something about these humans is different. They are resistant in ways we haven't seen before." Zorthol stared at the screen showing Earth. "No matter. They will submit like all the others. They have 4 days left." But in those 4 days, the resistance grew stronger. Humanity was preparing to fight back in ways the Vraxians could never imagine. Jack Carter watched the Vraxian ships from the window of his apartment. The former Army Ranger had seen combat in many places, but nothing like this. His phone rang. It was Olivia Reyes, a scientist he had met at a government briefing last month. "Jack, I need to show you something," she said. "It's about the aliens. Can you come to my lab?" An hour later, Jack stood in Olivia's laboratory. Looking at screens filled with data, Olivia pointed to a chart showing colorful waves. "This is a brain scan of a person affected by the Vraxian mind control," she explained. "And this one shows someone who isn't affected." The patterns were completely different. "What does it mean?" Jack asked. "Humans evolved on Earth with specific radiation patterns from our sun," Olivia said. "Our brains develop differently than other species the Vraxians have conquered. About 40% of humans are naturally immune to their control." Jack leaned forward. "So we have a chance. If we can figure out how to use this." Olivia nodded. Meanwhile, in a hidden facility in the Rocky Mountains, Commander Keith Hudson gathered a team of military personnel who had gone off the grid. They had computers, weapons, and determination. "The government is signing surrender papers tomorrow," Keith told the room. "But we are not surrendering. I've made contact with similar groups across the country. We are the resistance." A young soldier raised her hand. "Sir, how do we fight aliens with technology we don't understand?" Keith smiled. "We start by understanding it." At that moment, in a lab at MIT, Susan Fletcher and Dr. Paul Jimenez were working on a piece of Vraxian technology, a small crystal shard from a damaged alien drone. "Try the frequency again," Susan said. Paul adjusted the sound equipment. The crystal vibrated slightly. "Higher," Susan instructed. As the sound pitch increased, the crystal began to shake more violently. Suddenly, it cracked. "It worked," Susan exclaimed. "Their technology is vulnerable to specific sound frequencies." Paul looked worried. "This is just a small piece. Their ships are massive." "It's a start," Susan said. "We need to get this information to the resistance." The day of the official surrender arrived. World leaders gathered at the United Nations in New York. The Vraxian ambassador stood tall above them, his blue crystalline skin gleaming under the lights. "Your wise decision to join the Vraxian Empire will benefit your species," Zorthal announced. "You will serve as Class 3 citizens with basic rights and protections." As papers were being signed, Zorthal received an urgent message. A Vraxian outpost in Denver had gone silent. Then another in Seattle. Greg Sullivan, now leading a cell of resistance fighters in Boston, received a message on his encrypted phone. "Operation Soundwave successful. 2 outposts down." In her garage in Dallas, Lisa Patel finished building a device based on Susan's design. It looked simple, just a modified speaker connected to an amplifier. But when aimed at Vraxian technology, it could cause serious damage. "We have 12 more ready to distribute," she told her growing team of resistance members. "The aliens won't know what hit them." Back at Vraxian High Command, Zorthal was puzzled. Why are these humans still resisting? The official surrender is complete. His security chief looked concerned. "These humans are unpredictable. They don't act as a unified group like other species we've conquered." "Increase the psychic broadcast power," Zorthal ordered. "Every other species has submitted when their leaders surrendered." But the increased broadcast had an unexpected effect. Some humans who were previously susceptible became sick, while others developed immunity. In the Rocky Mountain base, Commander Hudson received reports from across the country. "The resistance is growing," his communications officer reported. "People are hiding immune humans from Vraxian patrols." Jack Carter and Olivia Rice arrived at the base with their research. "We think we can develop a way to protect the vulnerable humans from Vraxian control," Olivia explained. "And with Susan Fletcher's sound technology, we might be able to fight back." For the first time since the massive ships appeared in Earth's sky, humans had hope. Eric Castillo moved silently through the shadows of what used to be downtown Chicago. The former Special Forces soldier led a team of 6 resistance fighters toward the gleaming crystal structure that the Vraxians had built over the ruins of Willis Tower. Each person carried a backpack containing Susan Fletcher's sound device. "Remember, we placed them at the 4 corners of the building," Eric whispered. "Then we activate them at exactly the same time." The team split up. Eric took the north corner with a woman named Kate who had been a police officer before the invasion. They waited until the Vraxian guards walked past, then quickly moved to the base of the structure. Eric carefully placed the device against the crystal wall. Its magnet stuck firmly to the alien material. He checked his watch and gave Kate a nod. 2 minutes. Across the world in New York, UN Ambassador Diane Young sat in a meeting with Vraxian officials. She smiled politely as they discussed how humans would be transported to work camps on other planets. But under the table, her hand tightly gripped a small device that would send a signal to the resistance. "I believe humans will adapt well to serving the Empire," she said, her voice steady despite her disgust. Her aide, Tim Nelson, took notes on a tablet, secretly recording everything the Vraxians revealed about their plans. Back in Chicago, Eric's watch beeped softly. Now he whispered into his radio. All around the building, the team activated their devices. At first, nothing happened. Then a high-pitched sound filled the air, barely audible to human ears. The crystal structure began to vibrate. The Vraxian guards looked around in confusion, their glass-like skin starting to show tiny cracks. One of them grabbed his communication device, but it shattered in his hand. "It's working," Kate whispered excitedly. Inside the building, control panels cracked and shattered. The main crystal that powered the Vraxian command systems split down the middle and fell apart. Without its power source, the force field around the structure collapsed. Eric's radio crackled. "All teams report success," a voice said. "Command system is down. Get out now." The team melted back into the shadows as Vraxian reinforcements rushed toward their failed outpost. By morning, resistance fighters had taken control of the building. News of the Chicago victory spread quickly through secret channels. In Boston, Greg Sullivan gathered his team. "If Chicago can do it, so can we," he told them. "We target their communication hub tomorrow." 3 days after the Chicago attack, Zorthol requested a meeting with human resistance leaders. The message was broadcast on all frequencies. "We wish to negotiate better terms," the Vraxian ambassador announced. "There is no need for further violence." At the resistance base in the Rocky Mountains, Commander Hudson played the message for his leadership team. "It's a trap," Frank Williams said immediately. "The old military strategists have fought in 3 wars. They want to identify our leaders and eliminate them." Jack Carter nodded in agreement. "This is classic. They can't beat us by force, so they try to divide us." "But we should send someone," Olivia suggested. "We could learn more about them." After much debate, they decided to send a hologram instead of a real person. The Vraxians wouldn't know the difference. The meeting took place the next day. The Vraxian ambassador seemed troubled by the human resistance. "Why do you fight when your leaders have surrendered?" Zorthol asked. "Other species accepted our rule once their governments did." The hologram of Commander Hudson replied, "Humans don't just follow orders. Each of us decides for ourselves." This concept clearly confused the Vraxian. "But this is inefficient. Your species lacks unity." "No," Hudson said. "We have something better. We have freedom." After the meeting, Zorthol spoke with his war council. "These humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They continue to resist despite having inferior technology." One council member suggested, "Perhaps we should withdraw and find an easier world to conquer." "No," Zorthol said firmly. "The Empire does not retreat. We must find another way to control these humans." But for the first time in the 1,000-year history of the Vraxian Empire, doubt had entered their minds. 4 months had passed since the Vraxians first appeared in Earth's skies. The resistance had grown stronger each week. Humans shared information through old radio systems that the aliens couldn't track. They built more sound weapons and attacked Vraxian outposts across the globe. At the main resistance base, Jack Carter was on night watch when the radar showed something unusual. A small ship was approaching, but it wasn't Vraxian design. "We have an unidentified craft requesting landing permission," Jack reported to Commander Hudson. They claim they're not Vraxian. Keep weapons ready, but allow them to land, Hudson ordered. The ship touched down a mile from the base. A team led by Jack went to meet it. When the door opened, they aimed their guns, ready for anything. What stepped out shocked everyone. The alien was tall with orange skin and 4 eyes. It didn't look anything like a Vraxian. "I am Kylazan of the Tellurian people," the alien said in a strange accent. "I come seeking the humans who resist the Vraxian Empire." Jack kept his gun raised. "Why should we trust you?" "Because my people have watched the Vraxians conquer world after world," Kylazan replied. "You are not the first to resist, but you are the first to succeed." After careful screening, Kylazan was brought to the base. The alien shared information about the Vraxian Empire that humans never knew. 32 worlds have fallen to them, Kylazan explained, showing holographic maps of star systems. But on many of these worlds, secret resistance groups still exist. They just can't fight openly because they lack your immunity to Vraxian control. Carol Martinez, a linguist working for the Resistance, spent days studying the Tellurian historical records. She discovered important information. "The Vraxian Empire isn't as stable as they want us to think," she told the leadership team. "Several conquered species have been planning rebellions for years, but they haven't been able to coordinate or fight effectively." "Why not?" Olivia asked. "Most species are fully affected by the Vraxian mind control," Carol explained. "Only a small percentage can resist it, and they get caught quickly." Commander Hudson leaned forward. "But humans are different." "Exactly," Carol nodded. "According to these records, about 40% of humans are naturally immune. That's unheard of in any other species." This news gave the Resistance new hope. They weren't fighting alone. Meanwhile, Nicole Hawkins led a team on a dangerous mission. A group of human scientists had been captured and were being held at a Vraxian research facility in what used to be San Francisco. Among them was Dr. Ben Howard, an expert in human genetics. Nicole's team used sound weapons to disable the facility's security systems. They moved quickly through the building, freeing the captured scientists. "Thank you," Dr. Howard said as Nicole cut the restraints binding him to a lab table. "They've been experimenting on me for weeks." "Can you walk?" Nicole asked. "Yes," he replied. "And I have critical information. I know why humans can resist their control when other species can't. They escaped just as Vraxian reinforcements arrived." Back at the Resistance base, Dr. Howard shared his discovery with the science team. "It's our DNA," he explained. "Humans evolved with a unique neural pathway that shields part of our brain from outside influence. The Vraxians have never encountered this before." "Can we use this information somehow?" Jack asked. Dr. Howard nodded. "With the right equipment, we might be able to enhance this natural immunity in all humans." Kylazan was impressed. "If you can protect all humans from control, you might be able to help other species too." For the first time, the Resistance began to think beyond just surviving. Maybe they could free the other conquered worlds too. In his command ship, Zorthol received troubling news. "The Tellurians have made contact with the humans," his spy reported. "They are sharing information." Zorthol's 3 eyes narrowed. "This changes everything. We must crush this Resistance now, before it spreads to our other territories." He sent an urgent message to the Vraxian homeworld. "Send the full invasion fleet. Earth requires our immediate attention." The Resistance movement had become a global force. In every country, humans fought against the Vraxian control. They shared information and weapons through secret networks. The aliens were surprised by how quickly humans adapted to fighting them. Navy Commander Samantha Ellis sat in her submarine deep under the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. Barracuda was one of the few military vessels that had escaped the initial Vraxian attacks. Now it was part of a hidden fleet. "All ships report ready," her communications officer said. Samantha nodded. "Begin Operation Undertow." Across the world's oceans, 20 submarines moved toward their targets. The Vraxians had built underwater relay stations to control their ships. These stations were vulnerable to attack from below. At the same time, Army Major Roy Garcia led ground forces in Mexico City. They had sound weapons and armor made from recycled Vraxian crystal. The streets were filled with the sounds of battle as they pushed toward the Vraxian control center. Team Alpha moved to the east entrance, Roy ordered through his radio. Team Bravo, provide cover fire. The Vraxians fought back with energy weapons, but the humans kept advancing. They had learned to move quickly and use the city buildings for cover. Even ordinary people joined the fight. In a small town in Iowa, Nurse Maria Gonzalez treated injured resistance fighters in a secret clinic set up in a barn. She had learned how to heal wounds caused by Vraxian weapons. "This will help with the pain," she told a young fighter as she applied a special bandage to his arm. On his farm nearby, John Peterson grew extra food for the resistance. He also let them hide equipment in his old storm cellar. The Vraxians never bothered to check such places. "They think their technology is too advanced for us," John told his neighbors as they loaded supplies onto trucks. "But they don't understand how resourceful humans can be." The Vraxian High Command was worried. Their reports showed attacks on their bases increasing every day. Zor Thol called an emergency meeting with his officers. "Our forces are stretched too thin," one officer reported. "The humans attack in too many places at once. We cannot predict where they will strike next. The reinforcements from our homeworld will arrive in 30 Earth days," another officer said. "We must hold until then." Zor Thol looked at the map showing all the resistance attacks. "These humans are unlike any species we have faced. They do not give up." Meanwhile, hidden on the far side of the moon, Admiral Steve Blackwood prepared Earth's remaining space forces. After the invasion, he had gathered the surviving ships and crews and established a secret base. "The Vraxians have called for reinforcements," Steve told his pilots. "Our scouts have detected a large fleet approaching from their home world. We must be ready to intercept them." The pilots looked nervous but determined. Their ships were small compared to the massive Vraxian vessels, but they had been modified with new weapons based on Susan Fletcher's sound technology. "We may be outnumbered," Steve continued, "but we have the element of surprise. The Vraxians don't know we're here." Back on Earth, the coordinated attacks continued. Samantha's submarine successfully destroyed 15 underwater relay stations. Roy's forces captured the control center in Mexico City. Similar victories happened in cities across the world. In the Resistance headquarters, Commander Hudson received the reports with satisfaction. "The tide is turning," he told his team. "For the first time, we're pushing them back." Jack Carter pointed to a map showing Vraxian-controlled areas shrinking. "They're calling for help from their home world. That means we're winning. But it also means the real battle is just beginning," Olivia Rice warned. "They won't give up easily." Kalezin, the Tellurian ambassador, entered the room with urgent news. "My people have detected the Vraxian reinforcement fleet. It's much larger than we expected." The room fell silent. They had won many battles, but could they win against an entire empire? "Then we need to be ready," Commander Hudson said firmly. "Alert all resistance cells worldwide, and contact Admiral Blackwood on the moonbase. It's time for humanity's biggest fight yet." With the help of the Tellurians, humans began to contact resistance fighters on other conquered worlds. Engineer Heather Ross worked day and night to build a special communication system. It used frequencies that the Vraxians couldn't detect. "This should let us talk to resistance groups on at least 7 different planets," Heather explained to Commander Hudson as she adjusted the final settings. The first contact was with the Zentari, a race that had been under Vraxian control for 50 years. Their resistance leader was shocked to hear from Earth. "We thought we were alone in our fight," the Zentari said through the translator. "Most of our people are controlled by Vraxian mind technology." "We can help with that," Jack Carter replied. "Our scientists have developed a way to block their control." Within days, resistance groups from other conquered worlds began to join what they called the Freedom Alliance. They shared information about Vraxian weaknesses and strengths. Hope spread across the stars for the first time in centuries. The Vraxians detected this new alliance forming. Zor Thul reported to his superiors on the homeworld. The humans are coordinating with other resistance groups. This threatens our entire empire. The Vraxian High Council responded with an order: deploy the Mind Shard. The Mind Shard was the Vraxians' most terrible weapon. It could permanently enslave entire populations. It had only been used twice in the 1,000-year history of their empire. Both times, it had ended all resistance immediately. When the resistance learned about this weapon from their alien allies, fear spread through their ranks. But Dr. Kevin Landry, working with scientists from 3 different alien species, refused to give up. If it works on the mind, we can block it, Kevin insisted. We just need to create enough protective devices in time. Teams of engineers worked around the clock, building small devices that could protect humans from the Mind Shard. They couldn't make enough for everyone, but they could protect key resistance fighters. Meanwhile, Admiral Blackwood prepared for the coming battle near the moon. His fleet was small, just 30 ships against hundreds of Vraxian vessels. But surprise was on their side. They don't expect resistance in space, Steve told his captains during the final briefing. Hit their command ships first, then scatter. Use the moon for cover. The Vraxian reinforcement fleet arrived on schedule. As they approached Earth's orbit, their sensors detected no threats. They were unprepared when Admiral Blackwood's ships launched a surprise attack from behind the moon. Captain Linda Morris commanded the retrofitted destroyer U.S. Vigilant. Her ship carried the most powerful sound cannons ever built. Target their flagship, she ordered. Full power to weapons. The sound cannons fired. Invisible waves of energy struck the Vraxian flagship. Its crystal hull began to crack. Other human ships attacked different targets, causing confusion in the Vraxian fleet. On Earth, people watched the space battle through telescopes. Bright flashes lit up the night sky as ships exploded. For the first time, a Vraxian fleet was taking heavy losses. The Vraxians fought back with energy weapons. Several human ships were destroyed. But the battle continued for hours as the smaller, faster Earth vessels used hit-and-run tactics. Captain Linda's ship took a direct hit but kept fighting. "We're not giving up," she told her crew as systems failed around them. "Redirect power to the main cannon for one more shot." The Vigilant fired directly at the Vraxian flagship's command center. The crystal structure shattered. Without guidance, the massive ship drifted out of control and collided with 2 other Vraxian vessels. "The flagship is down," Linda reported. Cheers erupted across the human fleet. When the battle ended, the humans had destroyed 30% of the Vraxian fleet. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was something no other species had ever achieved. News of the battle spread quickly across Earth and to other worlds. The Freedom Alliance celebrated their first major victory against the Vraxian armée. In the Resistance headquarters, Commander Hudson received the battle report. Captain Linda Morris and the Vigilant have become symbols of hope across the Alliance. He told his team, "Other species are joining us every day." Kylazan nodded in agreement. The Vraxians are facing something they've never experienced before: united resistance across multiple worlds. And it all started with humans who refused to surrender. 1 year after the Vraxians first arrived on Earth, the war had changed completely. The Freedom Alliance now included 17 different species. Humans led the fight, sharing their technology and strategies with others. General Ryan Cooper stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship, looking at the holographic map of Vraxian space. 3 key Vraxian colony worlds, Zenturi Prime, Nelker, and Vos, were now marked with blue flags, showing they had been liberated. The Vos liberation was the easiest yet, Ryan told his officers. The local population rose up as soon as our ships entered the system. The Freedom Alliance had grown powerful. Dr. Kevin Landry's protection devices had been mass-produced and distributed across conquered worlds. Everywhere they went, enslaved species broke free from Praxian control. On Earth, the unified human government met in the old United Nations building in New York. President Michelle Banks addressed the representatives from every nation. "1 year ago, we faced extinction," she said. "Today, we lead a galactic alliance. The Vraxians thought we would surrender like everyone else. They never understood the human spirit." The crowd applauded. Then Michelle introduced her next proposal. "Today, I ask you to approve the formation of the Galactic Cooperative, an organization that will unite free worlds based on mutual respect and defense." The vote was unanimous. After centuries of fighting among themselves, humans had united to face a common enemy. Now they would help build a new future for multiple species. Meanwhile, on the Vraxian homeworld, the ruling council faced a crisis. Their 1,000-year empire was collapsing faster than anyone thought possible. "We have lost 20% of our territory," one council member reported. "Rebellions are spreading to all our worlds. Our control systems are failing everywhere." For the first time in their history, the Vraxians considered surrender. Zorthol, who had spent the most time studying humans, addressed the council. "These humans are different from any species we have encountered," he said. "They value freedom above all else. But they also show mercy to those who respect their values. Are you suggesting we surrender to primitives?" Another council member asked in shock. "I am suggesting we adapt," Zorthol replied. "Our empire is ending, but our species can survive if we are willing to change." After much debate, the council sent Zorthol to meet with the human leaders. His ship arrived at Earth under a flag of truce. General Ryan Cooper and President Michelle Banks met him in the neutral territory of the moon base. "The Vraxian Empire wishes to discuss terms," Zorthol began. There was no pride in his voice now, only weariness. "We recognize that continued war benefits no one." Michelle studied the alien carefully. "The Freedom Alliance will accept nothing less than full independence for all conquered worlds." "We are prepared to grant this," Zorthol said. "But what will become of the Vraxian people?" Ryan Cooper answered, "That depends on you. If you're willing to join the Galactic Cooperative as equals rather than conquerors, there's a place for you." 1 month later, representatives from 35 species gathered in the Grand Hall of the new Galactic Cooperative headquarters. Among them was a small delegation of Vraxians, still uncomfortable in their new role as equals rather than rulers. As they signed the founding charter, William Cole watched from the back of the room. The old resistance fighter had seen the entire war from beginning to end. His grandson tugged at his sleeve. "Grandpa, did you really help defeat the whole alien empire?" the boy asked. William smiled. "No one person did it," he explained. "Humans won because we refused to give up. When everyone else surrendered, we kept fighting." "But why were humans different?" the boy pressed. William thought for a moment. "Because throughout our history, we've always valued freedom. No matter how powerful our enemies were, we never stopped fighting for it." As the ceremony ended, a new era began. The stars were no longer filled with fear of the Vraxian Empire. Instead, a new alliance based on freedom and cooperation spread through the galaxy. And it all started because one species, humans, refused to surrender.